from Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Olumide Macaulay.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 extends ease of lockdown by 4 weeks, lifts ban on interstate travel, schools and domestic flights to resume with conditions. Lagos government confirms the state is in active community transmission level of COVID-19, says it has conducted over 10,000 diagnoses so far. Victor Giardon officially hands over APC national leadership to Governor Maimala Buni as party's caretaker committee is inaugurated. Court strikes out certificate forgery suit against Governor Godwin Obaseki ahead of Edo governorship election in September. And World Health Organization warns coronavirus is far from being over, says world will need greater store of resilience and patience in months ahead. Plus, business and news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari to flag off construction of 2.2 billion cubic feet at Jaokuta Kaduna Kano gas pipeline project to boost domestic utilization of natural gas.
On sports news, Super Eagles and Lille striker Victor Osimhen wins the Marc Vivien Foé Award for the best African player in the French Ligue 1.
And from Abuja, more concerns grow over insecurity in the north, with border communities between Nigeria and Cameroon working to end attacks.
And we begin with our coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. President Muhammadu Buhari today approved the extension of the second phase of eased lockdown by another 4 weeks, effective Tuesday, June the 30th, through Monday, July the 27th. The chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Abbas Mustafa, announced the extension at the daily news briefing of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in Abuja. According to him, the extension has some modifications to the ease of lockdown protocols, allowing interstate travel outside the curfew hours, while students taking their final examinations can resume school.
Let me once more welcome you all to...
It is exactly 4 weeks since the PTF announced the second phase of the eased lockdown on the 1st of June this year. Chairman of the PTF, Mr. Abbas Mustafa, says the task force has submitted its report and recommendations to President Buhari, who has approved an extension of the second phase of the eased lockdown by 4 weeks, but with some modifications.
I am pleased to inform you that Mr. President has carefully considered the fifth interim report of the PTF and has accordingly approved that, with the exception of some modifications to be expatiated upon later, the phase 2 of the eased lockdown be extended with another 4 weeks, with effect from Tuesday, June 30th, 2020, through midnight of Monday, 27th July, 2020. Specifically, however, the following measures shall either remain in place or come into effect. Permission of movement across state borders only outside curfew hours with effect from 1st July 2020. Safe reopening of schools to allow only students in graduating classes, resume in person for preparation for examinations. 5, safe reopening of domestic aviation services as soon as practicable.
The national coordinator of the PTF further clarifies the modifications to the guidelines.
Specifically in relation to parks and terminals, there will be restricted access with disinfection and sanitization. Waiting areas for passengers must have social distancing measures. Buses should have a maximum of 50% capacity. And non-compliance with the guidelines will result in withdrawal of permission to operate interstate mass transit.
Is this little relaxation?
Questions are taken from journalists, but with a bit of censorship.
Please, if there's any question from the outside which has no bearing to these issues, please will not entertain them, and please don't ask them.
So what exactly is the fate of the Nigeria aviation sector and air travelers as the ban on interstate travel is gradually lifted?
The aviation industry is allowed to resume domestic operations as soon as practicable, in line with existing international and local guidelines on COVID-19.
There's going to be maintenance of some bit of social distancing on the aircraft. If an aircraft has a capacity of 150 people, they might now be restricted to about 100 or 75. Every time you see a plane take off, there is an attendant cost to that. Who will bear the cost? It will be shared.
It's been 3 months since the federal government restricted interstate movement in March this year in order to curb the spread of COVID-19. Notwithstanding, the number of confirmed cases has continued to spike, making some to wonder if the decision to lift the restrictions on interstate travel at this time is really the best option to take.
Earlier in the day, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 also briefed the President on the status of the fight against the pandemic in the country. Part of their submission was that 18 local government areas in Nigeria account for 60% of COVID-19 cases, and those local government areas have to be locked down to contain the spread of the pandemic in the country. The chairman of the PTF made this known to State House correspondents after his team met with President Buhari. He said the precision lockdown will be implemented by the state governments where the 18 local governments are located.
But you don't have to go back inside. It's back. Okay. So when you are done, the other members will do it.
Meanwhile, the Lagos state government says it has diagnosed over 10,000 COVID-19 cases. At a briefing on the COVID-19 situation, the Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, explained that the state had reached the level of active community transmission. The next strategy is to work with the private sector, and that government has identified 7 laboratories that can carry out sophisticated COVID-19 testing.
Within the hall here, top staff of the Lagos State Ministry of Health are seated to give an update on the COVID-19 situation in the state. From the figures, over 10,000 people have been tested, while another 2,000 plus people have refused to come in for treatments.
They're not missing. They've been informed of their status, and they've decided that they don't wish to be admitted. So they've made it difficult for us to find them. The evacuation team, once they know our number, they stop picking our calls. When we go to their homes to collect them, they're not there. Now, if we're diagnosing 250 every day, you can imagine we need to move to several locations in one day. If a person doesn't wish to be admitted, it's very difficult to enforce it. I did say about 6 weeks ago that we might see between 90 to 120,000 cases of COVID-19 in Lagos by August.
The state government is also pushing its testing strategy further. This time, 7 private labs are to join the diagnostic team.
It is not the test that you can perform in any laboratory. It requires a high level of sophistication, a high level of expertise, and that is why there are only 6 laboratories that are in the consortium, private laboratories that are in the consortium at the moment.
Over 1,500 patients have been discharged, 500 patients still in isolation, and the state government says it is converting its isolation centers to treatment facility as COVID-19 fight goes on.
Also in Lagos State, part of measures taken to curb the spread of COVID-19 is the arrest of 179 persons by the police command for violating interstate non-essential travel restriction. The violators were arrested during a 2-day operation in various interstate checkpoints and motor parks. They include 43 commercial bus drivers conveying passengers to Abuja, Kogi, Abia, and the northern part of the country, while 43 vehicles were also impounded. The Commissioner of Police, Lagos State Command, Hakeem Odumusu, warns commercial vehicle operators against violating interstate movement restriction orders. From Lagos to Adamawa State, where the COVID-19 containment team has announced that the state has now recorded that 84 persons were infected with the COVID-19 disease. Out of this number, 40 persons are on admission at the State Isolation Center, while 24 have been discharged. According to the Commission of Health, 11 new cases have been recorded as at yesterday, while 44 have been discharged. And with an increase in COVID-19 infections after the lifting of the total lockdown in Plateau State, the state government says it is taking extra measures to enforce the directive aimed at curbing the spread of the virus. The Secretary to the state government and coordinator of the state's COVID-19 response, Professor Danladi Atu, told journalists in Jos, the state capital, that emphasis will be on 6 local government areas that have a high prevalence of the disease.
The enforcement teams will wage a robust action on defaulters, whether citizens or organizations, particularly in the 6 local governments, which include Jos North, Jos South, Bakin-Ladi, Mangu, Kanam, and Kanke. It will be understood that the next phase will see other local governments also witnessing this type of enforcement and enlightenment that we shall launch tomorrow. This enforcement will go simultaneously with public education campaign by health educators and National Accreditation Agency to further enlighten the citizens on the dangers of the disease and what to do to be protected. It is important to make it abundantly clear that this action is not in any way aimed at stigmatizing people living in these local government areas or affected communities, but an exercise targeted at ensuring their safety and containment of the pandemic. We shall remain focused on ensuring that we protect our citizens from the coronavirus pandemic. All we continue to ask for is the cooperation and support of all citizens towards defeating the disease.
And from Plateau to neighboring Bauchi State, not less than 15 million naira is being expended every 2 weeks to fight COVID-19. Governor Bala Mohammed announced this during the official inauguration of the state's molecular reference laboratory, explaining that the payment includes allowances for contact tracing and surveillance, case management, logistics, amongst others. Our correspondent, Hajara Aliu, reports that the laboratory has a capacity to carry out 300 tests per day.
On Tuesday, March the 24th, 2020, Bauchi State reported its index case of COVID-19, the first in the Northeast. With no capacity for testing, the state relied on the reference lab in Abuja, which is more than 400 kilometers journey. 2 months later, Bauchi established its own molecular reference laboratory as a quick response plan. It received certification from the NCDC and was registered as the 29th reference lab in the country. Operation soon commenced, with the first set of tests carried out on June the 3rd, with Governor Mohammed on the ground to inaugurate the laboratory.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you. Please.
Bauchi State does not have to take its samples to Abuja, Irua in Edo State, or Vom in Plateau State. This will significantly reduce the waiting time for results and improve our efficiency in managing the COVID-19.
The team of facilitators believe the laboratory will bring relief to health workers handling COVID-19 pandemic in the state.
The laboratory has the capacity to be expanded to include tests of other diseases like Lassa fever, yellow fever, and even HIV and hepatitis B viral loads, but with provision of other supportive equipment necessary for the calibration and upgrade.
100 samples are tested in this new lab a day, and the process involves 4 stages, with only 48 samples at a time. It takes a minimum of 5 to 6 hours before the result is known.
Once the sample is brought into the laboratory, it comes here first, the viral inactivation room. This is where the sample is processed to make it relatively sterile for further processing.
For a couple of days now, Bauchi has topped the list in the Northeast with the highest number of COVID-19 positive cases.
The figure has hit 500 with a 2.4% case fatality rate. In all, 3,459 samples have been tested in the entire state. Hajara Aliyu, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, Federal High Court grants varied bail conditions to former chairman of Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, accepts Ali Ndume as surety. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television, Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 extends ease of lockdown by 4 weeks, lifts ban on interstate travel, schools and domestic flights to resume with conditions. Lagos government confirms the state is in active community transmission level of COVID-19, says it has conducted over 10,000 diagnoses so far. Victor Giadom officially hands over APC National's leadership to Governor Maimala Buni as party's caretaker committee is inaugurated. Court strikes out certificate forgery suit against Governor Godwin Obaseki ahead of Edo governorship election in September. And World Health Organization warns coronavirus is far from being over, says world will need greater store of resilience and patience in months ahead. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. And now to politics. The former acting national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Victor Giadom, has officially handed over to the chairman of the party's caretaker committee. Mr. Giadom, at the official handing over ceremony held at the APC Secretariat in Abuja, assured the committee members of his readiness to work with them towards realizing the party's goals. Thereafter, the chairman of the committee, Governor Maimala Buni of Yobe State, inaugurated the 13-member committee.
The national headquarters of the All Progressives Congress comes alive as members of the caretaker committee arrive at the party secretariat in preparation for their inauguration. The chairman of the caretaker committee proceeds to swear in the other members of the committee. With the inauguration over, the chairman appeals to aggrieved members with pending lawsuits to withdraw them.
I urge all party members to heed the appeal by our leader, President Muhammad Buhari, GCFR, on his call to all aggrieved members who have instituted various cases in the courts to please withdraw such cases in the interest of our great party. As a political party built on strong ideology and parading men and women of enduring principle and integrity, we must prepare for real and anticipated changes and their consequences. The outcomes of changes that involves in our party politics must be decided by us.
The former acting national chairman of the party applauds President Buhari and the entire leadership of the National Executive Committee for rescuing the party as he urged them to learn from their mistakes.
It is my honor and privilege to hand over to you and to wish all of you a very successful reposition of our great party. Looking at the caliber of persons that were carefully selected and appointed by the National Executive Committee of our great party, I have no doubt that our party is on the path of prosperity. I have no doubt that this team will reposition our party and prepare our party for a proper convention.
Although relative peace appears to have returned to the party, the major task before the committee is the conduct of a national convention in addition to reconciliation of aggrieved members of the party at all levels.
Meanwhile, a federal high court sitting in Abuja has struck out the suit challenging the eligibility of Governor Godwin Obaseki for the Edo governorship elections, citing certificate forgery. In the suit filed by Adobo Williams and two others on the 29th of May 2020, they accused Governor Obaseki of forging his Bachelor of Arts certificate in Classical Studies from University of Ibadan. When the case came up for hearing today, neither the defendants nor the plaintiffs showed up, which led Justice Anuli Chikere to strike it out. And at the Court of Appeal, also in Abuja, judgment has been reserved in the suit filed by the People's Democratic Party, the Social Democratic Party, and their governorship candidates challenging the election of Mr. Yaya Bello as governor of Kogi State. At the final hearing in Abuja, Mr. Musa Wada's counsel, Jibrin Lukutepa, wants the Court of Appeal to upturn the decision of Kogi Governorship Election Tribunal. He told the court, led by Justice Adamu Jaro, that there was overwhelming evidence of electoral malpractice. Counsel for Independent National Electoral Commission, Dr. Alex Izion, on his part, asked the court to dismiss the appeal, a position also taken by lawyers to the governor and the All Progressives Congress. Staying with the courts, at another hearing, the Federal High Court in Abuja has further varied the bail conditions granted to former chairman of the Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, who is standing trial for money laundering. Mr. Maina's counsel had informed the court at the last adjourned date that Senator Ali Ndume has agreed to stand as surety for his client. He, however, admitted that the condition requiring the surety to have a certificate of occupancy of landed property in his name in Abuja has not been met. He therefore asked the court to accept a certified irrevocable power of attorney issued to Senator Ndume in the name of the previous owner of the land. Justice Okon Abang ruled that the court will accept the irrevocable power of attorney in place of the certificate of occupancy, but he refused to vary the condition requiring the surety to attend trial with the defendant and sign an attendance register of every date of the trial. And to the Federal High Court in Abuja, we're going to hand over, I beg your pardon, to our Abuja studios, where my colleague is standing by.
That's right, Olumide. Thank you for joining us in Abuja. We're still at the Federal High Court, where ruling on the bail application filed on behalf of suspected kidnapper Hamisu Bala, popularly known as Wadumi, and 6 others, has been fixed for July the 1st. Wadumi and his co-accused are facing trial on charges of terrorism, kidnapping, and illegal possession of firearms. Justice Binta Murtala Nyako fixed the date after the prosecution opened its case by calling its first principal witness. The witness, an assistant superintendent of police, is incidentally one of the policemen who survived the alleged onslaught by soldiers on the rescue mission of the suspects. He narrated how Mr. Bala regained his freedom, assisted by soldiers who killed 4 members of the team assigned to arrest him in Ibi local government area of Taraba State. Now to security. The Air Task Force ATF Operation Lafia Dole has destroyed several structures belonging to Boko Haram terrorists and killed several of its fighters at Warshale in northern Borno State. This is confirmed in a statement from the Coordinator Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, who explained that the airstrikes were carried out on June the 27th as part of subsidiary Operation Long Reach. The airstrikes follow intelligence reports and days of aerial surveillance, which established that the settlement was being used as staging area to launch attacks against troops in surrounding civilian settlements. It says the Air Task Force dispatched a Nigerian Air Force fighter jet to the location, which scored devastating hits on the settlement. Still on security, the police have announced the rescue of 6 children from suspected kidnappers while parading 27 suspects linked to kidnapping, murder, armed robbery, cattle rustling, and other crimes. At a briefing in Abuja, the Force Public Relations Officer, Mr. Frank Mbai, explained that one of the kidnap groups led by a suspect identified as Ghana kidnapped Dr. Benedict Audu, his son, and a friend. After collecting 7.5 million naira from Dr. Audu, the kidnappers killed all the 3 victims and buried them in shallow graves in Benue State.
The 3 kids here, 2 girls and a boy, were among 6 children that were recovered, rescued by detectives from IRT. As a matter of fact, the case started sometime in June last year, 2019, when we got a report about incessant child stealing taking place in some parts of the country. On the strength of that case, investigators from IRT commenced investigation. In the course of the investigation, we discovered a ring, a syndicate that specialized in stealing innocent children and selling them off to intended buyers, most of whom are also some other persons looking for fruits of the womb.
Meanwhile, the Abuja division of the Federal High Court has awarded a cost of 15 million naira against the Nigeria Police Force for killing of members of the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, IMN. The court, presided over by Justice Taiwo also ordered the immediate release of the bodies of the 3 members of the shared group deposited at the morgue of the National Hospital. Justice Taiwo in the judgment described the action of the police during protests, which turned violent on July the 22nd, 2019 in Abuja, as both illegal and unlawful. And when the news at 10 returns, President Muhammadu Buhari to flag off construction of 2.2 billion cubic feet Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano gas pipeline project to boost domestic utilization of natural gas. That's on Business News. Do join us again. Back. As the federal government continues to seek solutions for a more effective border management in Nigeria, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is advocating the need to get all agencies involved in the sector together. According to the Vice President, border management affects the economy very considerably, and renewed efforts will be channeled towards improving synergy amongst agencies involved. Professor Osinbajo stated this today during the virtual presentation of the research report of the National Defense College Course 28. The report identified the lack of coordination as a major weakness in Nigeria's border management sector, while key recommendations include the adoption of a comprehensive border surveillance program, the creation of National Border Management Service, amongst others. And residents of communities on the border areas of Nigeria and the Republic of Cameroon have vowed to tackle the security challenges confronting them and will leave no stone unturned until criminal elements are flushed out of the border area. This was a decision reached after a joint security meeting of government and community leaders of both countries, which held in Maiha local government area of Adamawa State.
Insecurity has been a major concern to border communities in Nigeria. And apart from insurgency, other criminal activities such as kidnapping, armed banditry, cattle rustling and armed robbery have become a daily occurrence. One of such is Maya, a community on the borders of Nigeria and the Republic of Cameroon, where trans-border crime has become the order of the day. Some members of the community say over 100 people have been kidnapped in recent times and ransom paid to secure their releases. Sometimes lives are lost in the process. This insecurity concern has brought together local vigilantes, religious and traditional leaders, local government chairmen and other relevant stakeholders from Nigeria and Cameroon.
I am here representing the governor of Gawa in Cameroon, and I'm here with our local government chairman, security agencies, and some officials to discuss ways of collaborating between Nigeria and my country, Cameroon. Maiha is a border local government area with Cameroon, and this meeting is to ensure peaceful coexistence and cooperation between both countries in the area of security. Cameroon and Nigeria have been brothers, and we will always work together to achieve peace and enhance the relationship between both countries. The activities of criminal elements along our borders must be checkmated and brought to the barest minimum.
People sleep inside cows.
The chairman of Maiha Local Government Council is worried with the high rate of kidnapping in the border communities.
Kidnapping in Maiha has become like a pure water business. every 2 days, 2 people, 4 people, 3 people. As I'm talking to you now, this year, kidnapping, as I know from my inception in 6 months, we had 128 kidnapping along Maiha, Belel, Cameroon Road.
Because of the insecurity that is bordering our 2 countries, Cameroon and Nigeria, and we at the border are always at the receiving end. Both countries came together, the officials came, and they have discussed extensively on how best forward they will move the 2 countries on security matters.
As these stakeholders return to their communities, implementation of the recommendations of the security meeting between Nigerians and Cameroonians living in the border area may curtail criminal activities.
President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of Deputy Commissioner of Police DCP Aliyu Abubakar Musa as his Chief Personal Security Officer CPSO. A statement from the President's spokesman, Mr. Garba Shehu, says Mr. Musa's last posting was in Nigerian Police Force Zone 5, Benin City. His appointment follows the redeployment of his predecessor, Commissioner of Police Abdul Karim Dauda. Now, are you interested in owning your home at a reasonable price? Well, here is some good news. Real estate company Revolution Plus Property says it has a home ownership package with your name on it. The company made this known in Lagos today when it unveiled its newest brand ambassador, Nollywood actress Toyin Abraham.
One of the basic necessities of life is shelter. But the housing deficit of over 17 million means many are without it. Some are forced to seek help in any way possible so they don't dwell under the open skies. That help has come in the form of the Revolution Plus Property Ownership Package. The real estate company says it believes that everyone should own a property of his or her own, regardless of their level of income.
But we have packages that whatever thing you are earning, whatever you are, either you are a corporate worker working in the bank, oil worker, you're an organizer, you sell fish, you become a landowner. Once you have land, house is not a problem.
And to help drive the message home, Revolution Plus unveils another brand ambassador, Toyin Abraham.
I can drop this one.
Buy land. Trust Revolution Plus. We will help you.
There's a pandemic, and many will say this is not the time to go buying property. The MD of Revolution Plus thinks otherwise. He says there's no better time than now.
When everybody is saying stay at home, live in your house, this is the best time for most people to have that consciousness that they must have their own home now. Because if the government is saying stay at home, if there's no house to stay, where are you going to live? But what we have done in the palliative and also in this period is to make sure that you pay 50,000 naira as deposit, then you spread the balance interest-free.
There's even a special one for the Ilea period.
Apart from you buying a home or a land, you are still going to get goodies like freezer, deep freezer, you are going to get microwave oven, you are going to get 4-burner gas cooker, you are going to get rice, you are going to get goats, so many goats.
Revolution Plus Property is a foremost real estate company in Nigeria with over 33 estates across the country. The company says it's determined to see more Nigerians own homes and the housing deficit reduced as much as possible.
Let's rejoin Olumide in our Lagos studio for more of the news at 10.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Ibrahim Adra in Abuja. Now, residents and businesses in Lagos now have an opportunity to enjoy the services offered by Chinmark Group. This is because the company has formally commissioned a new branch for customers to enjoy the value-added offerings the organization has been known for since its establishment over a decade. The company says it's now set to partner with the private sector to resuscitate the nation's economy.
With presence in over 7 states across the country, Chinmark Group is now expanding its operations to accommodate a new branch office in Lagos to cater to various needs ranging from land sales and purchases to estate development, transportation and medicals, among other services.
Currently, we have branches in We have branches in Anambra, we have branches in Enugu, we have a branch in Owerri, we have a branch in Uyo, we have a branch in Port Harcourt, we have one in Abuja. The Kaduna office is opening next month, and the Lagos office has officially been opened. Now, Lagos has been budgeted to have 5 branches in Lagos. So we're not just here to do normal business. We're here to take over the economy of Lagos. We have taken Lagos.
The new outlet is equipped to ensure excellent service delivery to existing and potential customers.
All that glitters
is red.
All that is red.
It's Chima.
The staff are also excited about this development and want customers to expect more in the areas of service, innovation, and product offerings.
If you look at Nigerian businesses, they tend to have a short span of running because of operations, quality management. But the Chimac brand will bring in a different concept altogether in quality management, in client and customer relationship, in sustainability, in product delivery. Chimac is totally different.
We touch lives. We are here to change the narrative of what people think about construction, of what people think about construction. When you talk about excellence, you have to think about Chimac Group. When you want to build excellence in everything, both loan, construction, and whenever you want to think about a global brand in Nigeria, you have to talk about Chimac.
Chimac Group promises to raise the bar in the way customers are served as they bring essential services closer to the doorsteps of Nigerians with the best quality available.
Time for business news now. Here's Anne Wanwado.
Thank you, Olumide. Hello and welcome to Business News. President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to flag off the construction of $2.8 billion Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano pipeline project, and that will happen tomorrow, June the 30th, the single largest gas pipeline project in the history of Nigeria. The 614-kilometer-long natural gas pipeline project is a joint venture project between Oilserve Limited, an indigenous oil and gas pipelines and facility company, and the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, which forms the first phase of the Trans-Nigeria gas pipeline project, and that is part of the 4,401-kilometer-long Trans-Saharan gas pipeline. Oilserve, in a statement today, says that it is 100% ready to execute the contract, which will boost the country's gas distribution by establishing a connecting pipeline network between the eastern, western, and northern regions of Nigeria, with its pool of highly qualified and experienced engineers. The company leading the execution of this project adds that it will be responsible for the engineering, procurement, and the construction of Segment 1 of 40-inch diameter pipeline, and it has already started a setup on site for the landmark event tomorrow. A report by PricewaterhouseCoopers also shows that if more palliatives are provided for farmers in the form of improved seedlings, basic farm implements at highly subsidized prices, and more affordable farm extension services, then Nigeria can attain food security despite the impact of COVID-19. That report released today by the consulting firm also says the impact of the virus is already being felt in the form of rising food prices, but more budgetary allocations should be given to the agricultural sector. It states that Nigeria can unlock significant improvement in its crop and livestock yields. It can also boost competitiveness in its agricultural produce by prioritizing investment and research and even development. Let's head to the local equities market. The bulls started having the positive week this week, with investors gaining 15.58 billion naira. And this is amid sell-off in the banking sector. Temple Ashaju has the details.
Thank you for joining us on the Stock Market Report. Equities opened the week impressive as investors sustained their interest on food and beverage giants Nestle PLC, which also propped up the benchmark index at the last trading session. Now, the consumer goods bellwether rose by 4.73% today and in turn lifted the market's overall performance by 0.12%, coupled with gains from PZ Cussons and Dangote Sugar. All other sectors of the market closed in red, except for the insurance and the consumer goods, all in the absence of a positive news to drive demand. Now, traders have been taking position in key sectors ahead of Q2 2020 earnings results as investors prepare to take stock of the first half of the year, despite uncertainties that have characterized the calendar year so far. And that's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
Thanks a lot, Temple. The News at 10 continues now with Olumide Macaulay. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawade.
Thank you, Anne. Still ahead on the News at 10. World Health Organization warns coronavirus is far from being over, says world will need greater store of resilience and patience in the months ahead. Plus, more stories from our London studio with Around the World in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The World Health Organization is warning that coronavirus is still far from being over. Director General of the organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, says the worst is yet to come and the world will need greater store of resilience, patience and generosity in the months ahead. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The number of COVID-19 cases worldwide now exceeds 10 million. That's according to the Johns Hopkins University. The situation continues to worsen in Brazil, where the health ministry announced more than 30,000 new cases in only one day, while the total number of deaths is nearing 60,000. Brazil now has the second highest number of cases and the second highest death toll in the world after the United States, but the number of daily new infections is twice as high than the US. Despite the rising numbers, the city of Rio de Janeiro decided to reopen its economic activities over the weekend. India is reporting a similar trend, where the health ministry in New Delhi announced that almost 20,000 new cases have been recorded in one day. This is the biggest single-day spike in new infections in the country so far. India counts now more than 500,000 cases of coronavirus and more than 16,000 deaths. In the UK, the government is considering imposing a lockdown in the city of Leicester after a surge of coronavirus cases there. The British government has recently been easing restrictions to get the stagnant economy moving, and this would be the first implementation of new restrictive measures since then. And there's something similar in Australia, where the state of Victoria is considering reimposing social distancing restrictions after the local government reported its biggest one-day rise in new infections in more than 2 months. Gunmen have attacked the Pakistan Stock Exchange building in the city of Karachi, killing 2 guards and a policeman before security forces killed all 4 of the attackers. Separatist insurgents from the Balochistan province claimed responsibility for the attack in a post on Twitter. The Pakistan Stock Exchange did not suspend trading during the attack. Separatists have been fighting for years in the Balochistan region, complaining about the exploitation of its rich natural resources by Pakistan's richer provinces. The UK and the European Union have resumed talks on a trade deal that will replace the ties severed by Brexit. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, and his British counterpart, David Frost, met in Brussels for the first time face-to-face since the beginning of the pandemic in Europe in March. Britain and the EU have intensified talks, but with only a few months until a deal must be reached, the sides still remain far apart. The transitional period during which the UK remains in the EU single market and the customs union expires at the end of the year. Heavy rainstorms have triggered massive floods in southwestern China, where at least 12 people have been killed and 10 remain missing. The government of the Sichuan province announced it has evacuated almost 8,000 people and rescue efforts are still underway. Meanwhile, heavy downpours over the weekend in central China's Hebei province have affected more than 650,000 people in 24 cities and counties. At least 23 ferry passengers have been killed in the Bangladesh capital Dhaka after the vessel sank due to a collision. The boat had around 50 passengers aboard when it capsized in the Buriganga River that runs along the southwest suburbs of the capital. The dead include 6 women and 3 children. Malawi's new president says the rerun election was a victory for democracy and justice after he was sworn in following his historic win.
Elected as president of the Republic.
Lazarus Chakwera won the ballot with nearly 60% of the vote, according to the Electoral Commission. The Commission also dismissed claims from the incumbent Mutharika of voting irregularities, including violence and intimidation against his election monitors. In his acceptance speech, Chakwera said he and his cabinet would work to restore a new generation's faith in having a government that serves, not a government that rules. Somalia's electoral chief has called for the parliamentary and presidential elections to be postponed until August 2021. The chairperson of the commission said that issues such as lack of funds, insecurity, flooding and the coronavirus pandemic had disrupted the commission's work. The parliamentary election was scheduled for November 2020, while the presidential election was expected to be held in February 2021. They were to be the country's first one-person, one-vote elections for 50 years. There are also elections in Poland, where, according to the exit polls, the incumbent president, Andrzej Duda, would be winning the first round. The re-election of Duda, a known ally of the ruling Nationalist Party Law and Justice, is considered key for the government to implement their conservative agenda, including reforms the EU says undermine the independence of the judiciary and erode the normal democratic system. And finally, the Italian Coast Guard has saved a rare sperm whale trapped in an illegal tangled fishing net off the coast of Lipari in Sicily. Sightings of sperm whales are a rare event in the Mediterranean Sea, and marine biologists consider this rescue being fundamental for the protection of the species. To make the event even more exceptional, the animal was accompanied by 3 more sperm whales, which he joined after being freed unharmed. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Former Super Eagles winger Finidi George believes Nigeria can produce a squad similar in quality to the class of 1994. Finidi George told Channel Sports in an Instagram live session that the onus is on the Nigeria Football Federation to put structures in place to get the best out of the current crop of players.
The NFF, they are the ones that will structure things and make sure we go in the right direction. We can build. It's never too late. Definitely, we'll get a team like that, but we have to know the strength of each and every player. I think that is what is lacking in our football today. The ball gets to Musa. Do others know what he's going to do?
Meanwhile, Nigerian international Victor Osimhen has won the 2020 Marc Vivien Foé Prize for the Best African Player in the French Ligue 1. Osimhen won the award ahead of Algerian Islam Slimani of AS Monaco and Moroccan Younes Abdelhamid of Stade de Reims. Barcelona have reached an agreement to sell midfielder Arthur to Juventus at the end of the season for a fee of €72 million with 10 million in add-ons. The 23-year-old, who joined Barca from Grêmio on a 6-year contract in 2018, has made 72 appearances for the Spanish champions. And that's sports news.
And the main news again. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 extended the ease of lockdown by 4 weeks today. The PTF also lifted the ban on interstate travel, while schools and domestic flights are also to resume, but with conditions. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Do have a good night and please stay safe.